Okay, so here's the thing, and let me pick your brain for a little minute. This cow that you see in the background of some of my videos and sometimes in the foreground, this came from a Synology event in London. It came from Synology UK and they had loads of them dotted around and they gave them away and went, oh, take one. And they did a whole thing where you took photos of yourself with the cow, doing stuff with the cow. It's even got like hashtags, cow on the back. The thing is, and genuinely I think about this from time to time, why a cow? Because, I mean, they're based in Milton Keynes, and there's like a big statue about these stone cows that are dotted around, but it looks nothing like them. And when it comes to a NAS, NASes give, like cows, they give milk, and, that they can be burgers and beef and stuff, but what am I missing? Tell me, please, in the comments. Why is this cow associated with Synology? Because genuinely, it both antagonises me and perplexes me. I mean, buffalo, it's a buffalo. It totally makes sense. It's buffalo. But a cow. A cow. Hello and welcome back, and today I want to talk about WD Red hard drives. That's right, it's another before you buy. These videos are designed to help you understand a lot more about the products you are buying, but lovely and quick. And I say quick, these are generally 10 to 20 minutes long, but let's be honest, you're going to spend hundreds if not thousands of pounds on something. Isn't it nice to know more about it just before you, go straight to the checkout? So, why are we talking about WD Red drives today? Well, because right now WD Red drives for NAS have just capped into, at the time of recording, 18 TB with a promised 20 TB drive on the horizon. And a number of you who are looking to buy a new network attached storage device and fully populating it are hearing good things, are hearing bad things, are hearing lots of stuff about WD Red, and hearing about Ultrastar here on the left. And it can all get confusing and terribly imposing. So today I'm going to talk about this brand. I'm going to explain who they are and what they've got to do with the NAS. I'm going to talk a lot more about their rejigged lineup of solutions and why that happened. And finally, I'm going to talk about the good and the bad points about buying their drives, when you should err more towards that end of the table, and when you can get away with this end. So straight away, WD, or Western Digital, is still one of easily the biggest hardware manufacturers in the world. They also champion a bunch of not just hard drives, but SSDs as well. They've got ones for NAS and ones not for NAS. And generally, one of the main ways in which they did such a good job of getting into the consensus minds of IT enthusiasts has been their colour spectrum. A bunch of drives, all with different colours, with each of those colours targeted towards different means. And it made it incredibly easy in order to understand which drive you need. So in the case of WD Red, these are designed for NAS. There's also WD Blue, your desktop PC kind of utilisation. WD Green, which is less used, which is kind of their energy efficient, low top end one in terms of performance. Then you've got WD Black, your kind of gamer prosumer class. And you've got WD Purple, which is their surveillance class. And then you've got WD Gold, which is their data center enterprise class. Now, as much as all of those are interesting, the reason we're focusing on here is, one, obviously, it's a NAS YouTube channel, but also because WD Red changed a lot last year. Now, why is that? If you're not already aware, say it with me. SMR, shingled magnetic recording. WD got into a kind of marketing or branding snafu, let's dance around the subject there. They ended up getting a lot of negative press regarding some of their drives. To give you a very quick recap, last year it was revealed that a number of their NAS drives were utilising a method of internal recording known as SMR, shingled magnetic recording, with the majority of more current drives arriving with perpendicular magnetic recording or conventional magnetic recording, PMR or CMR. That is when data on these disks goes around on these little cylindrical bits there in the middle, and all of that in there, all the data goes in there in nice even read-write tracks. Shingled magnetic recording is when the data on the write track overlaps ever so slightly, and you end up with the platters slightly overlapping all the way through the disk. Now, they still work pretty, high performing. They were still utilised for NAS. They were part of between 2 TB and 6 TB RAID hard drives. What's the problem? The drive needs a little bit more standby time in order for the rejigging of the contents of the platters to be reorganized by the internal disk. Now, in a NAS drive that can be offered 24/7 with constant activity and never getting idle time, the amount of time and idle and standby gets fewer and fewer between. And then if you have a drive failure, there is the potential, particularly with full array configurations, that your system, one, will take way too long for your RAID configuration to be rebuilt when you introduce a new drive, but also you run the risk of a second drive potentially failing. Now, shingled magnetic recording has always been wildly not recommended for utilization in network attached storage because of that means of the drives being constantly accessed and there not being enough time in the back end for SMR or drive managed SMR, DMSMR WD-RED we're using, to reorganize across those disks. Now, they're not the first people to come up with SMR. I mentioned it in my Seagate video before. It's been around for a long time. Seagate themselves had a bunch of SMR drives. Toshiba had some SMR drives. They're not unusual. The problem is that SMR drives are not designed for RAID level use, and also that you should be told that they are SMR, and that's where WD dropped the ball. They didn't tell people that this small range between there was 2, 4, I believe 5 TB as well, briefly, or 3 TB even, and 6 TB were SMR, and they didn't advertise it very loudly. In fact, it wasn't until a lot of people reverse engineered it that they found this out back in 2019, and then gradually WD eventually put their hands up and went, yep, they are SMR, but they are drive managed SMR. And there was a big hoo-ha, and then they had to reorganize the series into WD-RED, WD-RED Plus, and then you still had Pro, and then at the other end of the spectrum there you had Ultrastar. So where have we gone from here? Well, WD have now been a great deal more upfront about the CMR or SMR nature of their drives, with every single drive loudly shouting it. A few people have said it's a bit too little too late. But another thing they've done to their series, and this is something we've seen by other brands as well, is they've reorganized the capacities that are available across their range. Now, they're a little bit more widely available, I think, it's capacities than the likes of Seagate, who we talked about in our other videos. But if you are looking to buy a WD-RED drive, now I'm going to tell you whether you should go for WD-RED, whether you should go for WD-RED Plus, or whether you should go for WD-RED Pro. And at the end of the video, we're going to talk about this little silver one at the end of the table. So, WD-RED, once again, this is their standard non-kind of shouty SMR. It's the SMR drives there, DMSMR. This arrives in 2 TB, 3 TB, 4 TB and 6 TB. I also think we're going to see these drives disappear in due course. They have 5400 RPM internally. They do have a decent amount of cache because of that SMR area inside, and they have a 180 terabytes annual workload. So again, in a 3-year warranty, that's a pretty decent amount of write there onto that disk. They have 180 megabytes kind of top end performance, which a lot of you might argue, bit underwhelming. But again, for what they are and the smaller configurations they are designed for, that's okay. Should you go for WD-RED drives? It depends about the integrity of your data, really, because I do think we've done lots of tests already. When we did RAID building, RAID rebuilding, RAID field test, drive pulls, we did lots of videos using those SMR drives, and they seem to be fine in those scenarios, even when the systems were really full. But there is a body of evidence online that is less in favour of SMR. So if you are unsure, or you're having a little bit of doubt, my recommendation is to go for the WD-RED Plus series, which is available in 1 TB all the way through to 14 terabytes of storage. Again, that is a decent amount of storage, but doesn't seem to factor in the 16 or the 18 TB, and we'll touch onto that in a moment. Now, this drive, again, on the face of it, seems largely identical to that of the WD-RED standard series. It has that 180 terabytes workload, but the performance goes up to around 210 to 215 megabytes per second there, which is still pretty good as a middle point. And again, there are fluctuations across read and write. Now, these drives, it has to be said, are kind of non-pro class drives. They are designed for enclosures up to about, 4, 5, maybe up to about 8 bays. But even then, when you reach that capacity level, and particularly the top end ones, the 12 and the 14 TB, they're already getting quite rugged in their design. And if you are looking at populating with WD Red drives, I would say the minute you're going to the higher end capacities like the 14 TB, I would perhaps, that would be my jumping point onto Pro, because as mentioned, WD have kind of rejigged their available capacities, and in Pro, we've seen that Pro starts at 2 TB and that goes up to 18 TB. There isn't a non-Pro 18 TB, and that's because the architecture on these larger drives is near enough identical to that of non-Pro at the top end. So if you look at a 14 TB non-Pro drive with its 7200 RPM and compare it against the Pro class drive, the architecture, the MTBF, these are only small differences between them, and that's why the price as you go to the larger capacities of non-Pro start to get closer and closer and closer to the Pro equivalent. So if you are looking at 14 TB, I would definitely at that point switch to Pro anyway, because the price difference between non-Pro and Pro is much, much smaller, barely 35 quid for that drive. And added to that, we are talking about a drive, once again, that's available up to 18 TB, dedicated 7200 RPM, 256 to 512 megabytes of cache, boom, 300 terabytes written workload per year, so 120 terabytes more than that of the Red and Red Plus that we've mentioned. And on top of that, a reported performance of 200 up to 272 megabytes per second. That's almost verging on 100 megs. Was it like 9288, something like that, over that of the original Red drives that we were talking about. Once you introduce those drives into larger larger RAID volumes and have them all rolling in together there with that performance, you are going to see some fantastic internal and external throughput on those. Just bear in mind with Pro class drives, they can make a bit more noise. WD, and I will get onto that a little bit in a moment, but WD Pro drives certainly make more clicks, hums, whirs, and more noise than that of standard WD Red drives. So if you are quite sensitive to noise, it is recommended, or if you're going to be in very close proximity, to maybe think about that before you enter into a Pro class drive environment. So what are the other reasons? What are the standout things, the pros and the cons for looking at WD Red drives? Why you should for them over other brands or choose other brands over them? Well, first and foremost, I've already sort of touched on it there. The WD Red series, although once you get to the larger capacities, can be noisier than the smaller capacities, I found that the WD Red Pro series and standard Red, even at the larger capacities, are noticeably lower in terms of the clicks, hums, whirs, and general ambient noise than any other brand. I've had the Toshiba N300s in here. I've had a lot of, well, I've had two capacities, 16 TB and 8 TB of the Synology hard drives as well. They're based on a Toshiba build. And of course, we've tested pretty much all the Seagates as well here on the channel doing noise testing. And anyone that watched those will have noticed that at the same capacity level, the WD drives just were less click, hum, and whir. They were noisy once you got to the bigger capacity, sure, but compared with that of Seagate, they were noticeably lower, with more of a general ambient noise that was a pinch higher than normal, rather than the occasional spikes and clicks and hums and respins that we saw on some of the other brands. So, noise considerations when you're choosing between brands, this is a good time to look at WD. However, it's worth highlighting that WD drives, they're more expensive. They really are. If you look at any of the NAS capacities, I'm talking Pro or non-Pro. If you include them, compare them against the Toshiba N300, if you compare them against the Synology 880 5300, and you compare them against the Synology, the Seagate Iron Wolf series, you find that WD Red drives just cost more. Generally around 5 to 10%, and I know right now, recording this whilst Chia is absolutely rinsing the storage market. That is a very relative term, but WD Red drives are generally more expensive than anyone else. A little bit of that, I think, is because they got to the whole dedicated NAS hard drive and very slick marketing position they got to before anyone else. And WD has one of the best in-house manufacturing plants, particularly for SSDs, but certainly on hard drives as well. And unfortunately, that seems to come with a price tag. So if you are on a tight budget and you want to go for WD Red, if you were comparing Seagate and WD, as you add more drives, you may notice you might have to slice off a capacity when going with WD, slice off a terabyte when going for WD compared to Seagate to stay within your budget. Another thing that very rarely is spoken about, and something I've not really shown here on the channel, because quite frankly, it's really tough to show it, and I will find a way to emulate it perhaps in a future video. WD's warranty just seems to be slicker and smoother than anyone else I've dealt with. And it's not even just me. Look online and look at stories of support and warranty. It isn't to say that Toshiba and Seagate and the like are bad. They're not. But WD replacements seem to come ridiculously quickly. I don't know if that's they have a better handling on replacement and reserve stock. And I'm talking for, of course, Europe and the UK. I can only speak from my own geolocation. But WD seems to have, I think, the fastest of the turnarounds for replacement disks. And for enterprise level users, that's going to be really, really important. Seagate drives are available. Again, Exos, iWolf, all the rest of them, they're out there. And they have that great rescue recovery service, which you cannot fault for data recovery service included for free. But at the same time, if what you want is a replacement to your drive and you wanted to ask me which brand seems to have the fastest response and fastest turnaround for a replacement drive in the event of an RMA, gotta say, WD have always, from other users at Span or my own personal experience, WD does seem to really snap it around faster than anyone else I know. They even sent a drive in advance, which again wasn't even to me personally, but it was to Span, an advanced drive to send the broken one back. So again, very interesting there, and something it's very hard to show you here on the channel without giving too much away at the back end. So WD Red, you know, is for NAS. I could spend your ear all day and talk to you about vibration sensors and intelligent spin up, spin down, and 24/7 utilization, but I've covered that in a bunch of videos. But one thing I've not really talked about is when do you skip from the WD Red drives and onto Ultrastar, because all of these drives here are designed for 24/7 use. All three of these drives here are designed for utilization in a RAID configuration, redundant array of independent disks. All three of these drives have fast spin up, spin down. All three of these drives have a decent little workload in excess of 180 or 300, but this one's even bigger. I'll get onto that in a bit. And all three of these drives can be used and supported by the majority of NAS systems. So at what point does a user maybe fully populating on these two and then one day upscaling to the Ultrastar, or completely skips them entirely and goes straight onto the Ultrastar? When should they pursue it? Nice and simple. Ultrastar drives are designed for utilization in data center environments. Because of that, their architecture is more open-ended, and I would argue it has to cover a lot more bases. And even if you're a home user in a desktop environment, you can still take advantage of them. So first and foremost, the majority of Ultrastar drives are available with either one form of encryption or another ready available. And again, you don't have to have it, but the different kinds of format encryption within drive that a lot of companies need for legal compliance arrive in Ultrastar drives. The ranges are huge, with different data center class drives starting with a prerequisite DC or HC and all the others. But that multifaceted configuration across their drives is incredibly appealing for people that run enterprise, military class, or are incredibly aware that the data inside their system is both mission critical and incredibly confidential. On top of that, Ultrastar drives not only arrive in the SATA that these do, but they also operate in SAS as well. SAS at 12 gigabit means much faster connected speed between the drive and the system, which is particularly interesting when you're looking at some of the beefier drives coming soon that are edging closer and closer in hard drives to surpassing 300 megs on a mechanical hard drive and more. Yes, SAS is more beneficial than SSD, but still, in hard drive form, if you're looking at a system, a NAS system that's both SAS and SATA equipped, then you may see the benefit of array configuration used with SAS-based drives. Next, I mentioned terabytes written, or the workload per day. 180, 300, 550 terabytes written per year. 550, more than double that of this drive here, and close to double that of the Pro. That means that this drive can be fully written and written and written and written and written and overwritten and filled and deleted and filled and deleted and moved and archived so much more than any other drive. And if the rotation of your data, and of course you Chia guys are probably going to love that, an Ultrastar class drive brings a lot for you there. They are more expensive for obvious reasons for most of the things we've discussed, but that terabytes written is one of its most high ranking points, and the fact that you've got that consistent read-write performance at a higher level, with some of those read-writes in excess of 280, coming close to, I think, to 287, 285 on these disks, and maintaining that write in a way that the lesser drives will end up dipping back and forth. The Ultrastar holding that top end, that's probably one of the main reasons that a number of you may wish to completely skip red straight into Ultrastar. But regardless of which one of these drives you go for today, you are still getting support from a good brand with 3 years, 5 years, and 5 years warranty respectively. And regardless of which one you use in your network attached storage, depending on the volume of data and how much you're going to really hit that, you do have a great drive there. Thank you so much for watching. I hope this helped you in some small way to choose the right drive for your network attached storage setup. If so, chuck me a like. Otherwise, click subscribe if you want to learn more. And if you are interested in getting some free, completely free and impartial advice for your data storage setup, and you don't want to pay some expert thousands of pounds, use the free advice section below at NAS Compares. It is a completely free service. Head down, ask us a question. It's manned by myself and Eddie the web guy. It's two humans. Bear with us. We're only two human beings with human hands. We want to help you, and we won't charge you. It's a completely unbiased, unpaid service. We've got your email on there to respond to. We're not going to do anything with it. Again, we've got donation buttons there. Use them if you want. You don't have to. And if we ever link to a product, we might use affiliate marketing. But if we do, we will tell you, or it's abundantly clear. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time.